Good morning. This is John from the Springs Mennonite Church. And it's good to be with you today. Here we are in the middle of another week. I want to continue sharing on the idea of forgiveness. And forgiveness is, well, it's pretty important. And I know it's difficult, but it really is kind of simple. It's just complicated. So this morning, I'd like to share some verses that talk about the foundation, the motivation, the reason why you can forgive. We find it in Matthew chapter 5 and beginning with verse 43. Here's what Jesus is saying. You've heard the law says, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. In that way, you will be acting as true children of your Father in heaven. For he gives his sunlight to both the evil and the good, and he sends rain on the just and the unjust alike. If you only love those who love you, what reward is there for that? Well, Jesus is trying to say something here that we need to hear. In our world, loving people, forgiving people, living in harmony with people is not an idea that makes it into the capitalistic economic system, nor does it make its way into the geopolitic of the world. Just look at what's happening right now in Ukraine. And the idea that the world submits is you punish your enemies and you get revenge with your enemies. But Jesus is saying, no, wait a minute, there's another whole way to doing this. You see, the kingdom of God, which is yet to come, but it's still right here in this beginning stages. The kingdom of God gives us a different example. It gives us a different model of how we should live. And I want to share with you just a couple of paragraphs from this little book I've got. It's called Overcoming Tough Times. And this is the chapter that talks about the need to forgive. And here's what it says. Christ understood the importance of forgiveness when he commanded, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. But sometimes forgiveness is difficult. When we have been injured or embarrassed, we feel the urge to strike back and to hurt the ones who've hurt us. But Christ tells us that this is not the way. It's not his way. Christ teaches us that forgiveness is God's way and that mercy is an integral part of God's plan for our lives. In short, we are to weave the thread of forgiveness into the very fabric of our lives. Now, that's a powerful thought. What do you weave into the fabric of your life? Well, if it's hatred and anger and resentfulness and vengeance, you're going to be a pretty unhappy person. Now, as they say in some places, I'm just going to be real here. That is no way to find peace and happiness. It keeps you stirred up. There's no end to getting even. And even the smallest slight has to be confronted by some people. And they spend enormous emotional and mental and intellectual energy trying to figure this out. How can they get someone back? How can they get just a step ahead of those who are after them? Well, if that's your choice in life, I'm afraid I don't have much to help you with. If you've already decided that's the way you're going to go, I'm probably not going to change your mind. I wish I could. I wish I had a magic pill that would change that thought process, but I don't. All I have is the words of Jesus and the example of Jesus, and here's the important part, and the way it's worked out in my life, and I suspect in the lives of millions of others. You see, I want my life to stand for something that's really good, that's really eternal. I shared a Sunday or two ago a quote I read from someone that the things that we see never last. It's the things that we don't see that last. And and what we give with our lives are the things that you don't see if you really want them to be remembered. Now, I remember my great grandfather. He was very rich, but he also wasn't a nice person. And I remember that example after example after example of how he wasn't a nice person. I I have to think hard about the times where his money really meant much to me or my family. Now, maybe it meant it to someone else. I don't know. But he wasn't a really nice man. And that's sad. I wish I had a chance to go back and talk to him about that. I don't think he would have listened, but I don't know. You see, if our lives are based on love and caring, even for the enemy, and especially for the enemies, Jesus says, if you love someone who loves you, what does that mean? Everybody can do that. But to love someone who is upset with you, to care about someone who very determinedly disagrees with you, that takes a lot of work. But at the end of the day, you know that you have met evil with good. You have met unkindness with kindness. You have met anger with forgiveness. It may not change that other person, but it sure does change you. So today, I'd like you to think about your life. I know many of you who listen to me have heard this before and are trying to live it. And that's fantastic. But perhaps there's some who haven't heard it, or at least some who aren't trying to live it. And I want to encourage you today, if you find yourself angry and resentful, try forgiving the person and praying for them instead of complaining. See what happens. You just might be really, really surprised. Well, thanks so much for listening. If you have a need or a prayer concern, let us know. We'll do everything we can as fast as we can to help meet your need. Until tomorrow, God bless you. Take care. I'll talk to you again.